Supported by Patreon.
Hello and happy Halloween. Today I'm going to show you how to make a possessed deck of playing cards that cuts to your spectator selection. Stay tuned. You heard right, we're going to make a possessed deck of playing cards that cuts to your spectator selection. It is spooky as heck, and it is something that I've used to make people scream and run away. No joke. And hey, if we're meeting for the first time, my name's Alan. I'm a full-time professional magician, and I give my tips, tricks, tutorials, and lots of other magic-related content just like this video. So if that sounds cool to you, hit that subscribe button and that bell icon. That way you don't miss a single video. Let's go into the materials you're going to need for this really spooky trick. The first and most important is, you might have guessed it, invisible thread. Yes, I am using store-bought invisible thread. You can buy it from your magic retailer, and they're going to find the best quality for you possible, and they're going to have it cut to nice lengths and maybe even pre-stripped for you, which is nice. But if you don't have that, you can go down to your local Joann Fabrics and pick up woolly nylon. That's what this is, or a cheap equivalent of it. You'll know it's woolly nylon because it's a lot of little tiny hairs that come together as kind of a very thin yarn, and makes up a thread about that thick, which is very hard to see on camera, but there you go. Put it against my bald forehead, you can see it. So for this effect, you're going to need a length that goes from about your jaw, which is where I'm going to hold one piece, one end of the thread, and then down to about your thumb with your arm stretched out. So let's do that real quickly. About that long. That'll be different for every person, and you may find that that doesn't work for you. You need to use longer or shorter pieces of the thread. But if you've got something like a giant spool of a lifetime supply of invisible thread, you're not really worried about wasting a little bit of it. The other thing we're really going to need is we're going to need some way to attach the invisible thread on both ends. You can use sellotape, just some Scotch tape, which works really great. But what I have available to me right now is this, which is something you should probably pick up anyway. What the heck is this? Is this just some giant piece of lard? No, this is a solid block of beeswax. This cost me about $20 when I bought it, but it's a lifetime supply. I will never need any more magician's wax ever. Most magician's wax is either pure beeswax or a blend, usually with paraffin or other types of candle waxes to get the correct consistency. I'm just using pure beeswax. It works great for me. Again, you can buy magician's wax, which may work better for you. So now we got this length of thread. This is clearly not invisible, so how do we make it invisible? Let's pop down to the other camera and I'll show you. I've got this length of invisible thread, or what will soon be invisible thread, and all these little tiny hairs sticking out of the end of it. You have to pull out one single invisible hair, which is very tough, but let's go ahead and try to do this on camera and let me embarrass myself. You also don't need very much wax. I'm going to use a little bit more than you would actually need in a performance. Again, if you use sellotape, this is actually a little bit easier and a little bit better, but working with what I have, and magician's wax has a lot of other uses besides this. So I'm going to get a little ball of it, which I just scraped off using a coin, and a little ball, and I'm going to roll it into a little pill shape, and that's going to make it easier to wrap the thread around in a second and give it a little bit more surface area. Okay, and then I stick that to the back of my thumbnail. Now, we go ahead and try to pull out one of those single hairs, which is a pain in the booty, but I think I got one. Yep, there's one. And then I immediately start winding the thread around that pill a couple of revolutions until it's really good and anchored. And then I fold that in half and then roll it into a ball so that thread is really anchored completely throughout that thread there, the threads through the ball rather. So now we've got one single hair attached to a ball, and then we got all this other stuff. The best way to do this is under tension, but before you do anything else, get another little ball, roll it into a pill, get in the back of your thumbnail, because you're going to have to be able to catch that other little piece, that little pesky piece that's going to fall out of this thread and is prone to get lost, and you have to go hunt for it. Luckily, you've got one anchor point, so it's a little bit easier to see. Also, it's a good idea, I'm experienced in doing this, but it's a good idea to use a white sheet of paper for contrast if you need it, and that way you have an easier time seeing the thread you're trying to work with. My eyes are starting to go, I'm getting old, so it takes me a little bit more time than it used to when I was younger, but let's get rid of that thread there, and then I've got end somewhere in here. So now I've got to find it. This is that really tricky, awful part I was talking about. You don't want to get this tangled. You don't want to snag it on anything. If you have dry hands and little flaky skin, this will snap it. If you've got hangnails, if you've got anything like that, be very careful because invisible thread, if it snags on anything, you will break the thread. So everything's got to be very smooth, very soft. Good idea to moisturize your hands anyway when you're a magician because people are going to be looking at your hands all the time. So to have nice, smooth hands and well-manicured fingers is usually a good idea. Although I have not been taking very good care of my hands in recent months, truth be told. Okay, so now I've got a piece of invisible thread. Woo, bouncy stuff. Between two balls there. There's one ball on my fingers. The other ball's attached to that end. And now let's go back up to this camera. Hello! So what I do, and if you were doing this with a piece of tape, you'd want to put it in between your cheek and your gum. And I'm just going to do that with a little ball. Don't swallow this stuff. The thread is not a good idea to swallow. Okay, and now it's in position. I have it up on my upper teeth right there in the back against the molars, the gums, and the cheek. So you can still talk completely fine. The thread is coming down this corner of my mouth here, and then the thread comes out and goes onto the ball. Where do you put this ball? Good question. Let's come back down to the other camera. So, for me, I put that right there on the back of my thumbnail. Okay, and so now I've got pretty much complete range of motion. You got to be careful you don't snag that thread, but you have an idea of where it is because when you pull on it, you can feel the tension on your side of your mouth, and you can know that, yeah, you're still good. It hasn't snapped off or something. Okay, so now you get the deck of cards. This is where all the cool stuff happens. I have this really cool, authentic deck of playing cards. It's a reproduction of a deck from 1864. I thought, well, heck, if we're going to do a spooky, haunted deck, we should have an old deck of cards. So this is a reproduction of an 1864 deck. I will leave a link in the description if I can find these on Amazon. And, well, here's what you do now. I take that little piece that's stuck to the back of my thumb. Whenever I'm ready to perform the trick, you can have somebody select a card. This won't affect the thread at all. You have somebody select a card, they take it out. And then when they're looking at it, you place that little piece of wax on the bottom of the deck. And you really kind of want to mash that. If you're not using a cello tape or something, this is going to kind of make the deck stick out a lot. So you got to really make sure that you see, when I set that down, that's fine. But if you had a big ball of wax, it would be like this big teeter-totter thing. Even still, it's kind of like that. Flat piece of tape is the best. Now, how you put this inside the deck is really important because I want you to imagine the threads coming out is going along here, and then it's going up the short edge of the deck and then to my mouth. Okay, so to give you a different angle or an idea with just some regular sewing thread, this is the situation with the invisible thread. It's stuck to the bottom on the center, and the thread runs up along the short edge of the deck, and then a playing card would be inserted into the side here, and this is going to be really awkward with one hand, but let's see if we can do it. There you go. There we go. So then it's pushed into the deck, and it drags that thread along with it as it seals up. Okay? So now you've got this situation where that thread's pinched in between the two halves, and on this side, maybe you can see there's a piece of thread just on that, around that one card. So what happens whenever you pull on this single thread here, this end being in your mouth or whatever, you pull just straight up, it moves first the top half out of the way, and then pulls that other card, the selected card, out like that. And then you're left with the selected card. Square it up. And now I have a piece of thread that's wrapped around a card and then back out and then to the bottom of the deck. You can play around with where you put this too, because you could actually just put this right in a spectator's hand and do it like that. Or you could do it in your hand, or you could do it on a table, which is what I like to do. I like to do that because sometimes people are startled that the deck starts to move and then they drop the deck of cards and the effect is ruined. So with this trick, I generally don't do it in a person's hand. But now your hands are free and clear and empty and open. You can have somebody else hold onto your hands. You can stand around the deck. And then all you've got to do is create tension on that thread, and the cards will start to move. I'm going to use my thumb. It's hooked inside the thread right now, so it's sitting in the crotch of my thumb. Again, you just have to believe me because you can't see any of this. but here it is. And then if you pull your hands apart, see how the deck starts to move creepily, right? It's really creepy. Or you can stand up. I'll let go of that, and you can just kind of stand up and then feel the tension with your mouth and your lips. The haunted pack. You could talk about this being the pack that you found at a store with a little inscription on the box, or it was your grandfather's deck of cards, and you get a really creepy animation. You get a lot of mileage out of just a little piece of thread moving the top half of the deck aside and then animating the card being pushed out. It is super spooky. Comes to us from Don Allen. He was the first person to come up with the idea of the haunted pack, and I'm not sure which variation I'm showing you right now. I need to make some corrections. When I was filming this, I mistakenly said Don Allen was the originator of this effect. I am wrong. I meant Al Baker, and Al Baker is also wrong. This predates even Al Baker. The earliest example I can find is the late 1800s, but couldn't tell you who that was because they go uncredited in that cited work. So I don't know whose version this is. I honestly don't. I think it's old enough. I'm pretty sure it's old enough that I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. But if you know the creator and you can cite me the page or wherever I can find it, I would be deeply in your debt, and I appreciate any help that you can point me into that direction, and I will make any corrections in the description below. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. But this is old as the hills. There are more modern variations done with loops, which are excellent, and I recommend those for just about any worker because they are much easier to work with and much easier to get in and out of routines. They're what I use professionally. But this is not a bad way if this is all you got. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up. And if you need to go back over anything, if it's not clear, please leave me a message down below. Tell me, what is your favorite invisible thread effect, and what would you like me to see me teach next? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, and happy Halloween.